Now we go to the aforementioned Indianapolis Colts. They made a bunch of moves, and especially at quarterback. So I'll start there. Traded Carson Wentz to the Washington Commanders. I think it was for like a draft pick, if I remember. And then they did lose, left tackle Eric Fisher, a couple wide receivers in T.Y. Hilton and Zach Pascal, guard Mark Lewinsky, and a couple of corners in Xavier Rhodes and Rock Yassin. But they added Matt Ryan via trade from the Falcons, which obviously we'll go over that. And then running back Philip Lindsay to kind of pair with the running back room. Brought in tackle Dennis Kelly, who's been in Tennessee, spent some time in Green Bay last year, could be a solid rotational guy. Brought in another edge guy, Yannick Ngakoue, to pair with Kwity Paye and DeForest Buckner. Another big addition via free agency was cornerback Stephon Gilmore. So you could probably say they got better as opposed to the two guys they lost. Then in the draft, grabbed wide receiver Alec Pierce, who I really liked, tight end Jelani Woods, and then also grabbed a tackle Bernard Raymond. I just threw that in there. Who knows, But nonetheless, Sean, obviously, like we mentioned, they swung big-ish. They got Matt Ryan. I think we can all agree it's an upgrade to Carson Wentz. Do you think it's enough for them to win this division?
I don't think that Matt Ryan individually is enough to potentially win this team the division, but I do think that all of the offseason additions they made could be. You mentioned some of the guys like Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, he could have a monster season. He had a really good year for the Raiders last year, cross from Max Crosby. You add him on a defensive line with DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye. They got Shaquille Leonard right behind him. That could be a pretty monstrous front seven right there. And then they add Stephon Gilmore to the secondary. Sure, you lose Xavier Rhodes, who actually had a little small career resurgence with the Colts. He didn't have the greatest of ends to his time in Minnesota, but he had a really solid time in Indianapolis. And then Rock Ya-Sin, he was pretty decent while he was there for the most part. But Stephon Gilmore, I think he showed last year during his small stint with the Panthers that he still has it. So you put him on that team. You add, like I said, Yannick Ngakoue, that already really solid defense. I think they could be pretty deadly. And then I really love what they did on offense. Obviously, sort of similar to the way the Titans are built. They're built around their run game. And the Colts have one of the best offensive lines in football. They have Jonathan Taylor, who's one of the best running backs in football. And he's so incredibly young that there's not really worry that the wear and tear of giving him a massive workload is going to lead to an injury. So they can just keep him running. You add Matt Ryan, who I think he's an upgrade over Carson Wentz. I think that he hasn't had the best of times the last couple of years in Atlanta, but I don't think that he was also surrounded with the best team. And I don't think that his coaching staff, since Shanahan left, is going to be as good as the coaching staff is in Indianapolis. So maybe in terms of like arm talent right now, he might not be as good as Carson Wentz, but I think he'll make better decisions. I think he'll be a veteran. He'll play within the offense better. And so there won't be certain moments where, he forces it or he just has some bad mistakes. And Carson Wentz didn't have a lot of those. Like, he was solid for the most part. I think he was kind of unfairly the scapegoat for what happened last year. There's no reason they should be losing to the Jaguars at the end of the season. But I think that Matt Ryan overall, once again, he's been an MVP. He's been there. He's done that. He went to a Super Bowl. I think he has a lot of experience in big moments that could bode well for the Colts. So I love that addition, but I was a big fan of their draft. Obviously, Alec Pierce, you were really high on him. I think that he just provides a unique skill set for them that, you have Michael Pittman, and he's a fantastic receiver on the outside for these contested catches, but they didn't really have any other size at receiver outside of him last year. They had a lot of small, quick, agile guys. Zach Pascal was I think he's like 6', 6'1", so he was decently sized. But Alec Pierce, I believe he's like 6'3", so he gives you another really big receiver you can put on the outside. So it's not all the attention going towards Michael Pittman. They had Jelani Woods, who is just an athletic freak of a tight end. So I love the athleticism they add in those two guys. And then Bernard Raymond, he was an offensive lineman that I saw a lot of people even potentially mocking in the first round. So to get him in the third round, I thought that was great value. And he doesn't have to play right away because, like you talked about, they have Dennis Kelly, and they already have a really solid established line. So I'm a fan of what the Colts are able to do this offseason. I think that if they can just fix the small things, because I think the talent is there, but there was just certain moments last year, like I mentioned, that Jags game at the end of the year, that it seemed like just mentally they didn't they weren't able to execute. I don't know what it was. I don't know if they didn't prepare well enough. I don't know if they weren't on the same page in terms of chemistry. I'm not sure what the issue was, but there was something that happened that allowed them to get beat by teams who were worse than them last year. And we saw like when they played the Buccaneers and they played the Bills, they had some very competitive games last season against some of the best teams. So we know that they can compete at that level. It's just, can they do it consistently? I think with the additions of, like we talked about, Matt Ryan, Ngakoue, Gilmore, the rookies they drafted, even some stabilizing people like Phillip Lindsay to mix in, I think that can be a lot of the reason they have consistency this year. So I would not be shocked if they do end up winning the division.
I do want to start at the quarterback thing. I love the point you made. It wasn't really all on Wentz, but I think, like you alluded to, Matt Ryan is just a little bit safer of a guy. Like you mentioned, there were times where Wentz just tried to do too much, tried to play hero ball basically, and it's like, dude, it's third quarter, man. Just throw the ball away, or take the sack, or just take the check down. So I obviously with Matt Ryan, not as athletic, not as young, it was never really his game. But I think in terms of the passing game, it'll be a little bit more consistent, and obviously probably maybe trust the reads a little bit more because apparently there are, once again, we don't know, but there are also these reports. Wentz wasn't a great leader, this and that. And obviously Matt Ryan was well respected and a great leader in Atlanta, and he's been in the league for much longer. So maybe that's the stability there. Maybe that stability will lead to consistency, like John mentioned. Maybe with Matt Ryan, they don't drop that game to the Jaguars. So we'll see the impact he'll have. Obviously, I think he'll be just, if not the same, better. So, but yeah, I liked what they did with the wide receiver room too. Like I said, adding Alec Pierce, but also hopefully Paris Campbell can stay healthy. He was a second round pick. That's for the limited moments he's had. He's been great, but injuries have just plagued him. So hopefully he can stay healthy, because then those two could be really good, along with their running back room. You mentioned that they're not afraid to use Jonathan. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say real quick, Paris Campbell has apparently had a really good camp with Matt Ryan. Apparently they have great chemistry already, and so he could have a pretty good year if he stays healthy.
So, like I said, hopefully that can get going. And other than that, I'm not worried about the run game. Not really worried about their offensive line, like you mentioned. And two, I wouldn't be surprised if, like I said, they do a very good job of mixing other running backs. It's Frank Reich, why am I blanking on their scat back's name? Anyway, but adding Phillip Lindsay to that. Nyheim Hines. Okay, thank you. But Nyheim Hines is very good, just third down back, but Jonathan Taylor can do that too. So they have a lot of flexibility on offense, and I think there'll be a more consistent offense. And then defense, like you already mentioned, I think this defense will be even better. We expect it to be better. Getting another edge rusher, even if Yannick Ngakoue doesn't put up double-digit sacks, if he can just I don't know, just wreak a little more havoc, that'll be fine. They've been kind of missing two edge rushers for a while. They've been kind of, for a while they didn't really have one. Finally got Kwity Paye. He had a really good end of last year. We know DeForest Buckner's great. We know Shaquille Leonard's great. Julian Blackman's their safety. He's been playing really well. I think he's starting to rise up there in terms of one of the better safeties in the game. And then Stephon Gilmore, if he can be what he was last year, even like you mentioned, that's another thing they've been missing, I feel, the past few years, is a true man. If they need to play man, like a true corner they can rely on to live on an island on key downs and situations, and obviously Stephon Gilmore provides that. So this will be tough when we do our division picks and our season predictions, but I definitely put the Colts. Colts are definitely going to be in consideration, not just for division winners, but obviously in the upper echelon of the AFC. So we'll see how all the pieces fall, and if any of these draft picks can contribute. And like I said, if Gilmore and Ngakoue and Matt Ryan, these guys they brought in, if they can push them past the Titans and further. So that is the Indianapolis Colts.